You hear these buzzwords everywhere, right? Data science, big data. It's easy to think it's all just hype. But you also get this feeling that there's something genuinely important happening underneath it all. So today, we're going to peel back the layers and deconstruct what's really going on beyond the buzz. And that nagging feeling is the perfect place to start. The authors of the work we're looking at felt this exact same way. They said that behind all the noise, there was something real there, perhaps something deep and profound, representing a paradigm shift in our culture around data. And that whole shift really kicks off with one core idea: datafication. So, what exactly is datafication? Well, it's basically the process of taking things in our lives that we never used to measure and turning them into cold, hard data. I mean, think about it. Every time you tweet, you're datafying a random thought. LinkedIn, that's your professional network quantified. This idea of quantifying everything has led to a really powerful but also kind of dangerous belief. And that belief is this: N equals A all. Now, for anyone who's taken a stats class, you know that N usually stands for your sample size. But the idea in the big data era is that we're not just sampling anymore. Oh no, we're collecting data on everyone and everything. That N supposedly represents the entire population now. I mean, that sounds incredible, doesn't it? A complete, perfect picture of the world. But we have to pause and ask ourselves a really important question here. Is having all the data really the same as having the whole truth? So you have this myth, right? This idea that N equals all gives us this perfect, complete, unbiased picture of the world. But the reality, it's a lot messier. The truth is, these massive data sets are full of holes. Often, they're missing data from the very people we need to understand the most, which creates these huge, sometimes invisible biases. A perfect example of this is what happened during Hurricane Sandy. Some analysts looked at all the tweets coming out of the disaster zone and concluded, hey, maybe this storm isn't so bad. But why? Well, think about who could tweet during a hurricane. It's people who still had power, who had cell service, and who weren't in the middle of a life-threatening emergency. The data completely missed the voices of the most devastated people, giving a totally warped view of what was actually happening. Okay, so this whole N equals all problem, it leads us right into another huge myth, one you hear all the time. Let's just throw all the data in and let the data speak for itself, as if data is this pure, objective source of truth. But here's the thing. Data doesn't just speak. It doesn't magically appear. At every single step of the process, from the real world to a final insight, there's a human making choices. A human decides what question is worth asking. A human decides what to measure. A human decides how to clean up the messy, real-world data. And a human decides what story to tell with the results. It's all subjective. So what's the big takeaway here? Data doesn't just speak. It can't. It's a subjective snapshot of the world, filtered through human goals, human biases, and human choices. It's not some perfect mirror reflecting reality. No. It's more like a paintbrush, and a human is always holding the brush. All right, so if the magic isn't in having all the data, and it's not in the data being perfectly objective, then it's got to be the algorithms, right? These super complex, powerful machine learning models that can find patterns that no human ever could. Well, not so fast. There's this fantastic saying that really gets to the heart of it. Better features are better than better algorithms. Basically, what this means is that the human creativity you bring to the table, the cleverness in figuring out what information is actually meaningful, is way more important than just having the latest, fanciest algorithm. And that human element is absolutely critical for avoiding some really common, really nasty traps. One of the biggest is something called data leakage. Basically, it's like cheating on a test without realizing it. Your model learns from information that it would never actually have access to in the real world, which makes it look way, way smarter than it actually is. Let me give you a classic example of this. So Amazon wanted to build a model to predict who their big spenders were, and the model found a killer feature. Did the customer get free shipping? It was an amazing predictor. And wow, the model was incredibly accurate. But there was a huge catch. Why do people get free shipping? Because they've already spent a lot of money. The model was using the result to predict the cause. It was completely useless for finding new big spenders. And that story just perfectly illustrates the point. The real magic of data science isn't hidden inside some complex black box algorithm. It's in the messy, thoughtful, careful human work that happens before you even press run. That's what makes a model actually useful. Okay, so if we've busted the myths about huge data sets, objective truth, and magical algorithms, what does the real day-to-day work of a data scientist actually look like? There's this quote I absolutely love. Forming a data team is kind of like planning a heist, because it's not about some lone genius hacker in a dark room. No way. It's about putting together a crew, like in Ocean's 11, where every single person has a unique, specialized, and totally critical skill. And just look at the skill set you need for this heist. It is ridiculously broad. We're talking about heavy-duty stats and math, sure. Coding, absolutely. But also the grunt work of data cleaning, the complexities of machine learning, the art of communication, and deep domain expertise. And on top of all that, you need ethics and that fuzzy but crucial thing called data sense. It's a huge mix of skills. So when you pull it all together, what you get? You realize that data science isn't just a technical job. At its core, it's a deeply human-centric field. It's driven by the curiosity to ask good questions, the creativity to find clever answers, and the communication skills to explain what it all means to everyone else. And that really leaves us with one last and maybe the most important thought. As data keeps shaping more and more of our world, from what we buy to who gets a loan, the real question we have to ask isn't just what we can build, but how do we make sure this incredibly powerful, human-driven process is used wisely?